Steve Gardner does a great job, speaking of baseball, covering baseball for USA Today. Kind enough to join us on this Tuesday on the Boardwalk Honda Hotline. How you been, Steve?
Good, Rich. How about you?
I'm doing well. Let me ask you this right off the bat, because I actually started the show with what the NBA is doing as far as some of these teams. It's pretty prevalent. They're coming out, and we know they're tanking. I hate that word, by the way, but do you sense in baseball it's tanking, or is it teams just basically trying to shred payroll, and then it gives the impression, well, you're not trying to win, so it's got to be tanking?
I think that's more of what it is. I mean, you don't get a huge advantage. I mean, the baseball draft, way more than the NBA draft or the NFL draft, is such a crapshoot, to tell you the truth. Yeah, they're great players at the top, and generally, if you have a top pick, you're going to get a very good one. But those guys pan out, I think, a lot less than on a percentage basis than you do in the NFL and the NBA, just because of the college, experience and everything. So in baseball, I think it's more a financial thing. It's more of a rebuilding thing, and a 2 and 3 and 5 year plan to where teams can get worse. And we've seen it with the Cubs, we've seen it with the Astros, and I know that teams are looking at that as a model, but I don't know that every team can follow that plan precisely and get the same results, just because you need a whole lot of other factors in place to get to where the Cubs have gotten and where the Astros have.
We're seeing some injuries right away. Obviously, Vargas in the Mets, and we saw, Bird's always injured with the Yanks, and then we saw what happened to Turner. Do you think we're ever going to see something where some of these players, you just shut them down, you put them in bubble wrap? Like if you're the Mets with Cespedes, or say the Phillies with Santana, or the Nats with Harper, and the Yankees with Stanton and Judge, I mean, you give them some live or some batting practice, some at bats here and there, and I know it's fluky at times, but there's so much money invested in these guys. I mean, the Turner, that's unfortunate for a team that still has that sour taste in their mouth, losing the World Series in the fashion in which they lost, and then they had expectations going into the season. Now, arguably one of their best hitters is going to be out for 2 months.
It's tough, because that's the one thing you can't replicate on the backfields or in the batting cage or anything like that, is what happens at game speed. And players say they need to have those game reps to get into, opening day form or whatever. So I think you're always going to have that fine line that those injuries like that can happen at the end of spring training. They can happen on the first day of the regular season. But you've got to get the players ready to play. You've got to be peaking for opening day. And I think it's just one of those unfortunate things that, Justin Turner gets hit. It's a fluke injury, but those things are going to happen. And you can limit playing time, and I think we've seen a lot of pitchers are very sharp right now and are throwing really well. So, I mean, they're in pretty good shape, but there are always going to be those fluky injuries that spring up and happen no matter what you're trying to do to prevent them.
We talked about 2 weeks ago regarding a potential landing spot for Jake Arrieta. The Phillies come in, they swoop him in 3 years, $75 million contract. They make the splash with Santana. I know that Arrieta is going to have a bullpen session. He'll throw today. Who knows if he'll be ready for our opening day, or I should say right around that time, if he's going to be in pitching shape, so to speak. But what was your overall sentiment on the Phillies making this move? To me, it told me that they believe they're more than just competing now in the NL, maybe as that potential second wild card team, but they had to go out and get that other arm.
Yeah, I think so, and especially it looks really smart now with Jared Eichhoff, having that lat strain. They needed to have somebody else in that starting rotation, so it was a smart move there. And we've talked about this before. The Phillies are they're making progress. They're on the verge of being a team that not necessarily flips the switch, but says goes from we're rebuilding to we could be a contender. And we've seen this happen before with teams like the Minnesota Twins last year, where they're building a young team, and then all of a sudden, they start winning more games than they expected. I think that's what the Phillies are looking for. If they can catch, that proverbial lightning in a bottle and maybe get to 500 or a couple games over 500, stay in the race. Even if you're staying in the race until August and the beginning of September, I think that would be a huge win for this club, because now you've got guys, the veterans in Santana and Jake Arrieta, who can kind of take you to that next level because of their experience. They've been involved in the playoffs and the postseason. They know what it's all about, and they can help the youngsters. I think that's the secondary benefit, not only of the talent that they bring to the team, but the secondary benefit of that experience that can help carry the Phillies along. I think this could be the second best team in the NL East. I really do.
Washington clear-cut front runner. Well, I'll get to the Mets in a second, but you mentioned with the injury with Eichhoff, and it looks like he'll be on the shelf for at least 6 to 8 weeks. So as you alluded to, it makes that move for Arrieta. It pans out. But with that being said, you still have Alex Cobb on the market. Lance Lynn was scooped up by the Twins. So to me, Cobb would probably want a multi-year deal. I don't know, maybe the Phillies just turn around and give him a nice little one-year deal, so to speak. But you got the five-man rotation. If everyone's healthy, Arrieta, Nola, Eichhoff, Velasquez, Pivetta, Leiter Jr. had to fly back to Philly to have his right arm examined. He had some soreness in his forearm in his last start Friday. I mean, do you get a sense how this rotation is going to come into play? Because now you've got maybe some opportunities for Eflin, for Hutchinson, for Ben Lively, maybe Jake Thompson, who actually seems to be moving into that relief role. So how do you see the starting rotation coming into play here with Philadelphia?
Yeah, I think it's nice to have depth. And, that's not something that every team can say that they do have. And I think you've got a solid number one in Nola and then Arrieta coming in behind him. Then it's kind of a mishmash. What do you get out of Vince Velasquez? Can he give you more than 5 innings at a time? If so, I mean, the talent is there. I love his stuff and everything, but can he stay healthy? And, I think he's the big question mark. If he can have a good season, that would really boost the Phillies' chances. And then, from Pivetta and Eichhoff and Lively and Leiter, you've got guys that you can kind of try in there, and if somebody falters, you've got somebody else that could step in. I think that's a nice situation. And in terms of what the Phillies have and the youth that they have in that rotation, I think they can make do. And a lot of times you don't necessarily need that fifth starter, especially early in the year. So you can kind of flip those guys in and out as you wish, and maybe a bullpen day or something like that. So at this point, I think if Arrieta can come in and contribute immediately, it's a pretty solid rotation to start the year.
You mentioned the Mets, and you talk about their rotation. I think Matt's actually solidified his hold on a rotation spot. Vargas or no Vargas, he pitched extremely well the other day. 2 earned runs on 5 hits, struck out 9, I believe, over 6 frames. With that being said, if Vargas is ready to go, you think the Mets will turn around and Callaway will basically take Wheeler and just squeeze him to the bullpen, maybe option him in AAA?
I think so. I mean, I've seen him a couple of times, and he hasn't looked great. So just give him that opportunity to get regular starts and not be, pulled back and forth. Talking about, the open dates and off days early in the season, you don't need that if you're the fifth starter, and they want to count on him. So, yeah, that kind of makes sense. Put him down in the minor leagues and give him a chance to work things out. Obviously, just staying healthy is key for him, as it is for pretty much everybody in that Mets rotation. So the more they can do to keep those guys on schedule, on a regular routine and everything like that, I think that will do a lot for them and trying to keep them healthy all season long.
Who do you believe is the clear-cut ace of the Mets staff right now?
It's got to be DeGrom to me. I think he's shown the consistency, has shown the ability to go out and not get injured, stay healthy, stay on the mound. And when you can do that, it doesn't matter what kind of stuff you have. If you're Noah Syndergaard or Steven Matz or Matt Harvey or anybody like that, you've got to be on the mound. You got to be out there every day to be the ace. And I think that's why DeGrom has that title right now. And I think he is their best pitcher right now, despite the upside that Syndergaard has.
What do you make, in closing, what do you make with this potential of the Boston Red Sox and the Yankees playing in London?
I don't know. It seems to me, Major League Baseball is doing all these things to grow the game internationally, from playing in where they've had games in Australia, Japan, and Mexico. London's just another one. They see the NFL doing it. I'm not a huge fan of it, to tell you the truth, and I think really with the way that the NFL does it, and basically sends the Jacksonville Jaguars to London all the time, so it seems, I think maybe a better way to get those games that are not as important, to have a Yankees-Red Sox game, which could have some serious postseason implications and standing implications. I'm not a huge fan of it just because it throws in a whole bunch of those variables. I mean, nothing against the Kansas City Royals and the Tampa Bay Rays or anything like that, but I would imagine that baseball would be better served to maybe throw a few teams that are not as high profile out there and do it that way.
I think it's ludicrous. I do, because what are you going to sell me on? Oh, I've never been to Europe before. Oh, let me go because I want to watch the Red Sox and the Yankees play. I mean, it's just. And first of all, if you're a Red Sox fan, I believe you would be missing. You miss out on two home games.
Yeah,
now again,
somebody loses one. Maybe they lose one of each.
Oh, one of each. Okay,
like
but that whole, you might say, well, it's only one here or there, and potentially two. But in the grand scheme of things, it's not like they play these two teams. They play each other every day, so that game might mean something come August, come a playoff game where maybe you had that home field advantage to close out a series. I mean, I don't get it. I don't know. Are they, like you said, do you think they're looking at everything that the NFL is trying to do? And first of all, the NFL, you can't, not that you are, but you can't compare that entity to baseball. The NFL is a monster. That's why they can get away with these games in London or Mexico. They can appease certain fan bases. I just don't get. To me, baseball should be right here. I don't have no problem with opening the horizon, so to speak, but I just don't see a benefit of sticking a game or potential games in Europe.
Yeah, and I think, too, I mean, the World Baseball Classic is one of those things that kind of unifies the sport globally, at least to me. You know, maybe they could play some qualifying games in Europe or something like that with the World Baseball Classic. You'd still see good baseball. I mean, the World Baseball Classic was some pretty compelling stuff, you know, last spring. So that, to me, would seem to be a better way to try and grow the game globally than to have a regular season game in Europe that just is kind of a one-off and it's there and it's gone and it doesn't really have a chance to build up any momentum.
Yeah, well, listen, I know one thing. We got nine days to go, so then we can actually get into the season. We don't have to worry about London. Even though it feels like we're in London right now with this weather. It's horrible. I don't know where you are, but we're supposed to get hit with more snow.
Yeah, D.C. is bad, just as bad, I think.
Which means everyone's going to be running for the eggs and the bread and the milk. And I said before the bourbon, so.
Right. Well, after I hang up, I think I may have to make a trip out, too.
There you go. So, it's always good, a little afternoon hot toddy. So, all right, my friend, listen, stay warm. Always appreciate a couple moments. We'll talk next week when the season gets underway. Always appreciate it, pal.
Sounds great, Rich.
All right, you got it.
Take care.
You too. Steve Garner from USA Today on baseball, joining us on the Boardwalk Honda Hotline.